Hi, I'm Stuart Udell. I'm the CEO of Achieve3000. I also serve on AASA's National 2025 Learning Commission for Student-Centered and Equity-Focused Education. Today, we are here to talk about how we should be thinking about literacy in a digital world and in a world of COVID learning loss.
Stuart, it's so great to have you here today. You know, at smartsocial.com, we believe in keeping kids safe on social media so they can someday shine online. Today, to all of our parents and educators who are watching or listening to us all over the world, we want to talk about probably the most important skill in the world. Today, we're talking about literacy, as you just heard Stuart mention. And Stuart has a unique background in this because not only does he come from a company that's very interesting, but he's a customer of it. His daughter used it years and years ago, and they are a success story. Stuart, I want to welcome you to the podcast here today. Thanks for coming out. And I want to start off with a very basic question. What is the importance? I mean, this is an obvious question that everybody who's listening today knows. What's the importance of literacy to students these days?
Well, clearly, literacy is the gateway skill, Josh. There's no doubt about it. It provides access, it provides equity and ability to make a living. And the one thing we do know about literacy is that as we see measurable performance gains in literacy on standardized assessments or other tools, we typically see 40 to 60% correlated gains in other subjects. So a 1% increase in literacy test performance typically equates to 60, 50% or so for math, for science, for social studies. So we know, we call it the gateway skill because it has that effect. It's the ability to access content, information, and provides the platform upon which to critically think.
The gateway skill. I love that. Now, talk to us about what are some tips that educators can do? We're coming up upon summer, right? It happens every year. And we just had a pandemic. We're still coming out of that pandemic. What are some crucial things that educators can do to communicate with parents to keep students engaged over the summer?
And I think that is the key, Josh. It's about engagement over the summer. We know from data, and we internally at Achieve3000 have done several studies. We did one last May that showed that we saw an immediate decline in the amount of time students spent practicing the skill of reading by 45%. Now, we know that we got hit with a huge worldwide shock, so that was not surprising. By back to school, we saw the impact of those declines. Kids who had remained engaged in reading last spring lost on average about 8 points because there was still learning loss, broadly speaking. Kids who were not engaged, meaning they were not accessing practice materials in the area of literacy, lost about 20 lexile points in terms of readability levels. So we know that engagement matters a lot. And we're actually in the process of doing a study right now to determine what the full effects of the year are. But we kind of know what happened already. We know that there was tremendous learning loss on average. Not for all students, but on average. We also know that disadvantaged groups, there was a widening of the achievement gap. So it's very important for students and parents at all levels and educators to be thinking about what happens with kids this summer. Now, when we think about summer, when we think about best practice, getting reading materials in kids' hands is critically important. Just flexing that muscle, because like any skill, and literacy is a skill, whether it's shooting a basketball, playing piano, or riding a bike, practice that skill and keep it well honed. We also know from years of prior data and lots of studies that there typically is a little bit of a slide over the summer. We call it the summer slide. That's true in all academic subjects, but practice can make a difference. And it doesn't take that much practice. 2 or 3 times a week, reading for half an hour or 45 minutes is a really, really important thing. We also know there's a lot of funding available now for summer programs. That's not always been the case historically. But with the 3 stimulus funds, ESSER 1, 2, and 3, there's about $198 billion available for schools. One of the areas that schools are encouraged to focus on is the summer. When I think about summer, though, literacy is really important. Math is really important, but certainly so is enrichment, so is movement, getting kids moving and doing things over the summer. But this is not a summer to say, it's been a hard year, let's relax. The thing we need to say, it's been a hard year. How do we kind of keep kids going so that we don't have a repeat of last summer, because that was really a travesty.
Yeah, these are all really good points. And educators, if you're watching or listening to this, these are important things that we communicate with parents, right? Ways to stay engaged. Stuart, tell me some of the misconceptions that some educators or parents might have? What are some of the frequently asked questions? I know in the digital safety division, I just met with some CEOs and they said, what's a misconception in your industry? And in our world, in Smart Social, it's, hey, if I give my kids this phone, they'll be okay because Snapchat's a nice place for them to hang out. What they don't know is that they're connecting with 7 billion other people, and that the people on there who want to connect with your kids don't love your kids as much as you do. So there's all these misconceptions that we want to help guide educators and parents through. What are some literacy misconceptions that we need to alert people about?
Well, there's some misconceptions around making reading fun. It certainly needs to be, but there are really good engagement tools out there to kind of pull kids in. And that doesn't mean, flying objects and explosions when things happen in a reading platform. But, I don't care if a kid's reading a newspaper, a magazine, there's not a lot of that going on anymore, picking up a book or reading on a digital platform. But, one thing we talk a lot about internally is that student choice matters a lot in reading because it leads to student voice. If you want to develop kids who are critical thinkers, problem solvers, who have a point of view, you can't always force reading material upon them. Allowing students, if a student wants to read 12 books in a row about baseball, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Variety matters too. But there's a misconception that we need to tell kids what to read when really part of the engagement is actually in choosing a reading material that's high interest for the kid.
That's fascinating. Student choice leads to student voice. That's great. As long as you guide them on reading stuff at their level, I'm guessing. Let's actually move into that. What is a good level for students? Should they be reading a little above their level? How can we exercise that muscle, if you will?
Well, we've done a lot of research on this. There are a lot of folks out there in the industry that have, but the concept of zone of proximal development, which was developed by Vygotsky, a Russian educational philosopher, and suggests that where a student can work best is in the zone of proximal development. In layperson's terms, and this is not technically perfectly accurate, but in layperson's terms, that's an area that's hard enough to cause growth, but not too hard to cause frustration. Because when a kid cannot access content, that's frustrating. They tune out, they misbehave. And when it's too easy, we're not getting growth. So, finding that ZPD, or what we call also the just right reading level, is really, really important. Now, that means that we've got to be cognizant of where a student's reading level is and where the readability level of the content that the student is accessing is. And by the way, it's fine to go above and below the levels periodically. I mean, we like to think of ourselves as fairly educated folks who are advanced in life, but I'll read a John Grisham novel on the beach on vacation. So it's fine to enjoy reading and move in and out of level. But if we're really looking for growth, we want to be in that zone of proximal development. A platform like ours at Achieve3000, and there are others that can do this as well, can tell a kid, here's where you are, and serve up materials that are productive for that child.
Yeah, so let's talk about, your platform. We at Smart Social are here to introduce educators and parents to understand the tools that are out there right now, right? And so our free resources, one of these right now is, talk to us about a platform like yours. What does it do for educators and parents, and how is it used?
Well, our core platform, our legacy platform, we've got several products, but our core is called Achieve3000 Literacy. It's very well studied. It's been around for 20 years, and it's very unique. It's unique for a few reasons. The first is all of the calibration and the measurement of student performance is done on the Lexile framework and is done in an algorithm that is owned by Metametrics, which is the largest producer of readability formulas in the world. They've got 35 million students on the Lexile framework. So everything in our platform is independent in terms of student progress against readability calibration. The other thing that's very interesting about our platform is that when an article is assigned, that's a piece of content is assigned, it could be on volcanoes or baseball or anything else that's going on in the world. Each article is written at 12 different readability levels in English and 8 in Spanish. So if you and I, Josh, are in a 5th grade classroom, but you're reading at an 8th grade level and I'm reading at a 3rd grade level, we're reading the same article, except you have much more complex sentence structure, vocabulary. Your article's a little longer. The concepts are a little more challenging, but we're each accessing the content at our actual zone of proximal development or just right reading level, as I talked about earlier. So that's what makes it special. And then the teacher, of course, can take that subject area and assign a writing prompt or have a discussion in the classroom about it. Because what we really do well is provide differentiation in the classroom. That's very, very hard to do without giving kids different materials. In Achieve 3000 Literacy, we have all kids reading the same article, but at different reading levels.
That's fascinating. It sounds like a lot of work, right? Just to not only do that in English at every grade, but also in Spanish and Espanol as well. That's terrific. Hey, Stuart, I want to thank you for coming out here today. What's one last thing you'd tell people going into the summer? What's the one tip that you want to make sure that they really know, whether it's practical and tactical or strategic? What do you want educators to talk to parents about?
I think it's about keeping kids engaged over the summer. If kids have an opportunity for tutoring, either through their school district or individually, there are great platforms out there. I happen to be an investor in Varsity Tutors. They're an organization that provides an exchange so parents can find cost-effective tutoring solutions. But keep your kids engaged, again, not just in academics, but also in moving around and doing physical things and enrichment activities. We just want to, break a cycle and make sure that when our kids come back to school in August and September around the country, that they are well equipped to have a very successful year ahead.
These are great tips. To all of you listening or watching all over the country, you can learn more by going to Achieve3000.com to learn more about Stuart and his organization. And as you know from us at smartsocial.com, we're here to keep your kids safe on digital platforms like social media so they can someday shine online. It's our secret mission to get your kid that dream career, college internship. When I interned at Disney, it turned into a career that led me into brand marketing, which launched my career. And without great literacy, without my mom forcing me to say, you're going to take summer school, you're going to hate it. But now it has changed. We've got 6 books with my name on it. I never thought that a guy with a little bit of a disadvantage could turn into somebody that does that. So I'm a huge fan of what you do, Stuart. So thank you to everybody listening today. Thanks to Stuart for all this time. And to the rest of you, remember, your kids are watching. Remember to keep it light, bright, and polite. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.